Today I'm here, the Arches National Park. Arches National Park has an unique variety of well-exposed and colorful rock formations. It is located in the Paradox Basin of the Colorado Plateau physiographic province, which lies in parts of four western states: Utah, Colorado, Arizona, and New Mexico. The Paradox Basin straddles the Utah-Colorado state line in the north-central parts of the physiographic province and is an area in which thick beds of rock salt were deposited some 300 million years ago, mid-Pennsylvanian time. This salt is older than the rocks exposed in the park. Arches National Park has the greatest concentration of natural rock arches in the world, but this would not have been possible without the presence of salt. I have been to so many of these amazing places, but the landscaping of Arches National Park is so amazing, breathtaking. It looks unreal. Nobody can even dream this. It seems to me is a different planet. The attraction of Arches National Park are based on geologic phenomena, and an increased understanding of its geology can significantly add to the visitor's enjoyment. The rock formations are classed as sedimentary rocks by geologists and represent accumulations of sediment, clay, silt, sand, and gravel, and chemicals, salt, gypsum, limestone, and dolomite, that were deposited by water, wind, and gravity. As the sediments and chemicals built up, they were, in time, cemented together as hard rock by geologic processes. The thickness of these accumulations of sediments, including the salt, amounted to more than 15,000 feet and was deposited in a period of time spanning 210 million years, ending about 80 million years ago. Before the basin was formed, the area was covered by a shallow marine sea, which precipitated carbonates, limestone, and dolomite to the seafloor. As the floor of the basin was lowered, the margins were elevated so that the sea within the basin were restricted or cut off from the ocean. At first, the sea continued to precipitate carbonates, but the warm climates caused rapid evaporations and the salt in the seawater became concentrated. End of the Paleozoic time is the Triassic period, 245 to 206 million years ago. The next geologic formations deposited were the Moenkopi and Chinle Formation. The lower Moenkopi Formation consists mostly of brown fine sands and silt that were deposited on tidal flat. The thin beds of these rocks are commonly ripple marked. The Chinle Formation rock materials were deposited on the floodplains of streams. The sea by this time having retreated westward, sands and gritty materials filled channels of the ancient streams and rivers, between which reddish, finer grained sands, silts, and clay were deposited when the streams flooded their banks. As with the Carter Formation, salt movement affected the deposition and thickness of the Chinle Formation, but the Chinle sediments finally completely covered the salt. Jurassic period, 208 to 144 million years ago. The upper part of the Navajo sandstone and two other formations were deposited during the Jurassic period. The two formations, the Entrada sandstone and the Mauritian formation, each have three distinctive members. The Entrada is perhaps the most important formation in Arches National Park. After end of the Tertiary period, about 35 million years ago, the granitic rocks making up the core of the La Salle Mountains were intruded into the earth crust. Granitic rocks are formed within the earth crust by the cooling of molten rocks called magmas. Molten rocks reaching and cooling at the surface are called lavas. The La Salle mountain magma pushed its way up through the thousands of feet of salt and pushed aside the overlying rock layer, but little reached the surface. After the folding and faulting were over, the entire region was uplifted to a high altitude and the area was subjected to erosion. Our landscape began to form about 5 million years ago, and most of what we see today was created in the Quaternary period. Quaternary period starts 1.6 million years ago to present. The unconsolidated thin deposits of sand, stream, gravels, and silt that cover the older rocks are merely in transit in their voyages to the sea. But they give clues that help interpret the more recent geologic history. These recent deposits probably have been in the area less than 1.5 million years and have been weathered, broken, scarped, plugged, abraded, rubbed, or dissolved from the pre-existent rock by the action of water, ice, and wind. Talus deposits consist of blocks, boulders, smaller angular fragments of rock which fall by gravity from the cliffy units and accumulate on the slopes below. Soils developing by weathering slowly move toward the drainage by a process known as creep. Eventually, these materials reach the drainage and the flowing water continue the work by breaking down the larger particles and moving the smaller ones downstream. If the drainage is a dry wash, it gradually becomes choked with rock materials, eventually to be moved by flash floods. How arches and fins form is an interesting question. Arches can form in many ways, but most in the park are the result of a combination of three peculiar features: the nature of the Entrada sandstone and sand grains, the susceptibility of the sandstone to weathering and erosion, and fractures in the sandstone that were created during the formations of anticlines. Millions of years, the area was filled with debris deposited from winds, floods, streams, and ocean that came and went. Over time, this debris compressed into rock. The weight of the rock layer caused the salt bed below to become fluid, allowing it to thrust up and create domes and rise. What happened after the movement of salt molded the landscape? Erosion went to work on the surface rock layer and groundwater began to dissolve the underlying salt deposits. Water seeped through cracks in the weather rock and ice formed, further expanding the crevice and weakening the rock. Eventually, the domes began to collapse, leaving a maze of vertical free-standing rock walls known as fins. Wind and water continue to assault these fins until they eventually pour through and pieces begin to fall away, creating the amazing arches and fin you see today. If you are visiting Utah or Moab, you must visit in arches. It is really difficult to name a favorite portion of this park. Arches is one of the most awesome place I have ever been. That's it for today. Enjoy rest of them. Thank you very much.